Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Hey, I'm back. Gonna be back. Listen, I know we've done a lot of college football here on the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel over the last couple weeks. But as promised, I've told you all along, if there is basketball news that we need to discuss, we will do so. And as I've also told you, September is actually quietly a very important month in the world of college basketball because it's where a lot of high school visits and high school recruiting take place, right? So bottom line is, listen, your favorite coaches, they were out all summer evaluating players, offering players, setting up visits. Well, September is a busy month because coaches are on the road visiting high schools and high school players. But also beyond that, the players themselves are now visiting campuses. So every weekend we see big news, we see big reports about this 5-star is going there, that 5-star is going there. And so what I want to do today is do an update on a player that I find to just be absolutely fascinating because of the schools that are recruiting them, because of the schools that are no longer recruiting them, and because of what I just believe will be a fascinating recruitment over the next 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a little bit more. That is the name Braylon Mullins. Okay, so Braylon Mullins, 4-star guard from the state of Indiana. Listen, I don't care about 4-star, 5-star. What I care about is who is recruiting you. And this guy has a who's who of schools after him. He's already visited UConn. He's already visited North Carolina. He's already visited Michigan, set to visit Indiana, set to visit UConn. And he's so good, he actually just canceled visits to Kansas, Purdue, Tennessee, on and on and on and on and on. So this kid is coveted. He is believed to be, by basically anybody who follows this stuff, the best shooter in all of high school basketball. And I think we got a couple updates on his recruitment over the last couple days that are at least just worth diving into really quick. So first of all, the reports are, well, first of all, let's talk about this. I just mentioned it a minute ago, but this kid actually has canceled a couple visits in recent days. So you know the recruitment is starting to come down the stretch when you start canceling visits and saying, listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate the opportunity you're presenting me, but I know that you're not in the mix, so I'm not going to waste your time and waste your money by visiting campuses, okay? So in recent days, he has canceled visits to Duke and Tennessee. He was considering visits, so I think I misspoke a little bit a minute ago. I hope you'll forgive your boy Torres here, but was considering visits to Purdue and Kansas. Those are off the table. I believe Alabama was in the mix. They are off the table. And what's also interesting is he basically is set to announce next week his final 5. Now, if I had to guess, I would probably project that it's the 5 schools that he has either visited or will visit. So this is just speculation. Haven't talked to anybody in his camp, but I would guess the final 5 in some order will be North Carolina, Michigan, UConn. He has visited all 3, and Indiana and Kentucky, who he is set to visit in the coming weeks. Now, in terms of the updates, I think there's a couple interesting ones. I do think it starts with the home state school of Indiana, because if you follow the tea leaves, okay, you want to talk about a weekend that could shape not projection. What's the word I'm looking for? The opinion, whatever you want to say. Maybe it is the projection. The trajectory, I think, is the word I was looking for. You want to talk about a weekend that could impact the trajectory of Mike Woodson's future at Indiana. This weekend coming up right here is a big one for the Hoosiers, okay? So first off, Mullins will be on campus. He is a kid that is a priority recruit. He's from the home state. You don't want to lose him. But on top of that, Eric Ryby, a 5-star center who's also considering UConn, also considering a few other schools, he will be on campus. Trent Sisley, a 4-star who is from Indiana, he's now playing at one of the prep schools, will be on campus. So, this is a weekend where if Mike Woodson can close the deal on a couple of these kids, you're talking about a top 2, top 3 potential number 1 recruiting class in the country. And then beyond that, you would have a recruiting class that I think the fan base would rally around. Certainly, by the way, it's worth noting that at a time where Indiana fans are frustrated with the team's lack of shooting, the ability to land the number 1 shooter in the class, who's also from Indiana, By the way, Indiana fans, we've talked about the shooting thing. I think it's a little bit overrated. I think they'll be better this year. Trey Galloway's healthy, on and on, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is you start to close on kids on this weekend that are in this class. I mean, that might buy Mike Woodson another year, another 2 years. He could be there another 2 or 3 years just off what goes on this weekend, okay? But I bring it up because it is interesting. He is visiting this weekend. And what is also interesting, one of the updates I want to talk about, my buddy Mark Zanetto, who covers UConn for the Locked On UConn podcast, he has been all over this recruitment. He shared some interesting things about this recruitment on his show of late. Here is what Mark said about the recruitment. He said, Braylon Edwards is going to come down to UConn and Indiana. Kentucky is out, according to my sources. Wild card is IU will, quote, pay almost anything to keep him in the state of Indiana. So I just bring it up because what Mark is hearing, I think to me is largely what I've sort of heard as well. I do think right now, if you had to handicap this situation, I do think it's probably UConn and Indiana that both feel pretty good. Now, bluntly, this part I don't know. I have no insight into the NIL situation. My guess would be based on what we know about NIL that, yes, Indiana probably could offer more. Historically, Indiana seems to have more money. We know about the numbers that were reported around Umar Ballo, the center from Arizona, that is a 7-figure player at Indiana this offseason. And we also know, by the way, that historically UConn, their stance on NIL is we will be competitive, but we're not doing bidding wars. Like you want to come here, you want to compete for national championships, you want to be developed into a pro, then that's something that should sell itself. We'll take care of you financially. The UConn stuff, I will say I feel pretty confident in some of the numbers on some of the players on that team, but I just bring it up because if I don't think I don't even think it's not coming down to NIL for Brillan Mullins, but I do believe what Mark said that, Indiana probably has a little bit more NIL money anyway, almost a little bit like the Jasper Johnson situation at Kentucky, where it's like, if we got to overpay a little bit to keep the hometown kid at home, then we're going to go ahead and do it. But I do believe Indiana is in good shape going into this weekend, and I believe UConn's in really good shape as well. Brillan Mullins visited, I want to say sometime in like early August, maybe. I'm blanking on the exact dates. I want to say it was early August. It was around the time of the UConn Open practice and exhibition. I could be tripping up on those dates, but it doesn't change the fact that I believe they are in really good shape. As Mark mentioned on his podcast, he did reference the fact that like Hurley has kind of sold Braylon Mullins on, you're a dog, you're one of us, you want to come here and compete harder than anybody else competes, play harder than anybody else plays, be a dude, be a UConn guy where we are just full speed ahead. You're the kind of kid that we know would thrive here. So that's the first part of the interesting update. The second part is that, Mark mentioned Kentucky being out of the mix. I don't believe that at all. And it was actually interesting. Jack Pilgrim put out an article on Kentucky Sports Radio the other day that basically indicated that he still believes that Kentucky is in the mix there. Now, the issue with Kentucky and Braylon Mullins is Kentucky obviously just got a commitment from Jasper Johnson, the 5-star who we certainly talked a lot about on the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. Really talented player from the state of Kentucky. He committed, 2 weeks ago now, if my math is correct. All these weeks are running together. Once football season hits, I'm sorry, I can't keep my days and my months and my weeks straight, okay? But Jasper Johnson committed a few weeks ago. And from the Mullins camp, I can see where the issue would be, right? Is that they're sitting there saying, well, wait a second now. We love Coach Pope. We love Coach Feger. We love what they're about at Kentucky. But at the same time, Jasper Johnson's kind of an off-the-ball guard. He's not really a traditional point guard. Beyond that, Braylon Mullins is an off-the-ball point guard. He's not a traditional point guard. And maybe it's just a thing where they took their guy and maybe we have to look in another direction. Now, if you read the article on KSR, it looks like Jack feels like, and some Kentucky people feel like maybe it's not quite as big of an issue. First of all, it is worth noting, as we've discussed many times, Malachi Moreno, the other commitment for Kentucky in the class of 2025, also from the state of Kentucky. He was Braylon Mullins' high school teammate. By the way, if I said Braylon Edwards at any point in this article or in this video, forgive me. I got football on my brain. Braylon Edwards, the Michigan superstar, but I'm talking about Braylon Mullins, the wing from Indiana. But basically, the bottom line is Malachi Moreno played with Braylon Mullins on AAU. They know each other well, and he has said from the beginning, this kid is a priority for me to get to Lexington. So we'll see what happens there. I think the last real thought that I do have on Braylon Mullins in terms of his recruitment is, and his recruitment in terms of Kentucky is this, is I do believe, having followed this stuff for as long as I have followed it, I don't believe, based on everything else I've seen in this recruitment, that he would still be taking his visit. He's set to visit Kentucky late October for Big Blue Madness. I don't believe he would be visiting Kentucky in October if he was not considering them at all. Now, there's a long time between now and the end of October, especially in recruiting. Things change. But Mark Pope has been in for him many times over the course of the last couple of weeks to see him, to evaluate him, to be seen by the Mullins camp. But I just look at this whole recruitment. Just look at the recruitment, right? Is that if this was a kid that was not seriously considering Kentucky, he just canceled visits to Duke, to Tennessee. He was thinking about visiting Kansas and Purdue and saying, you know what, not the right spot for me. So if he was not seriously considering Kentucky, I don't believe he would be taking this visit in October. So to me, we'll see if that Final Five stays the way that it does. By the way, I haven't mentioned much about Michigan, much about North Carolina. You know, I don't have much from the Michigan perspective. Mark from Locked On UConn said the family is close with Dusty May and his staff. Carolina, I think, is a wild card as well, because Carolina, you look at who they will be losing potentially after this coming season, they're going to have opportunity in their backcourt right away, okay? This is a team that will certainly lose RJ Davis. What is RJ Davis? An off-the-ball shooter and scorer. You talk about an opportunity to step right in right away. That might be a heck of an opportunity for Braylon Mullins. North Carolina has not closed on any other guards in the class of 2025. They did not get Jasper Johnson. They have not gotten a couple others. And I didn't even mention the fact that Ian Jackson, the five-star guard, it feels as though could very easily be out of the mix later. You know, like Ian Jackson, when I say out of the mix, I mean he could go pro after this season. So fascinating recruitment. We'll see what that Final Five looks like. And I think we'll see this weekend what the buzz is coming out of the Indiana visit. This is a big weekend for Indiana. I don't think he's going to commit. He's going to do the whole thing where he posts the pictures on Instagram, hashtag not committed in the Indiana gear. But you talk about a big weekend for Indiana. Again, one that could shape the trajectory of the future of their program. We'll see if Mike Woodson can get some momentum coming out of here, but we'll get that top five, and we will keep going through this recruitment as time goes on. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Appreciate your support. We'll be back